everybody and welcome to my January reading wrap-up. So yes, it has been quite a while since I've done a reading wrap-up, especially a monthly reading wrap-up. It has been, I think, maybe 3 months. I think my last one was probably from October. I'm pretty sure it was. What can I say? I wasn't really in a very good reading mood, and also the books that I did read, I did not really feel like talk about them, which is not a good case for a booktuber because it's sort of like the foundation of this channel, but I just wasn't in the best reading mood, booktube mood, whatever. Anyway, I've mentioned this like in many videos before that I was in a reading slump, but in January of 2021, I definitely did a lot better when it comes to reading. I feel like I'm finally getting my reading groove back, which I'm so happy with, even though I'm reading slower than I normally do, or at least I did like before this massive reading slump. I will not complain whatsoever because I'm so happy that at least I'm reading something, which is just such an improvement already. So in January I finished almost 6 books. The last one I still just haven't finished yet, so I can't really count it towards January, but I will talk about it. And overall they were pretty good reads. I'm pretty pleased with what I've read, so you know, I think it's a pretty good and solid start to this year when it comes to reading. So yeah, I think I should just start and tell you all about the books that I've read in January, and yeah, let's just begin. So the first book that I finished is a very popular and hyped up one, and that is The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is a book about a girl named Eddie LaRue, and she is born in the 17th century in France. But she makes a deal with a sort of devil or demon or whatever that she will not grow old and will not get sick. But in exchange, everybody who ever meets her will forget her instantly, and she is unable to leave a mark on the world in whatsoever, like any way whatsoever. So this book is about her life. It's a long life, also an eventful life, but everybody keeps forgetting her, and there's a lot more to the story, but that's all I'm going to say for now. In any case, I got this one for my birthday back in November, and I was so excited to pick it up because normally V.E. Schwab books are a bit a hit or miss for me. I really enjoyed the Darker Shade of Magic series, but then her other books I wasn't the biggest fan of. I thought they were always okay, but not great. But let me start off by saying that Eddie LaRue is such a different kind of book than all her other books. I feel like even if you haven't been a fan of V.E. Schwab before, or Victoria Schwab, it depends whether it's young adult or adult, I would still recommend picking up Eddie LaRue because it's definitely so different. It's different in its writing, it's different in its storytelling, and basically I really enjoyed this one. Again, not that I did not enjoy some of her other books, but this one I felt it was whimsical, and it was also sort of like a fairy tale. It had that tragic aspect of what you often see in a fairy tale or mythology about making a deal with somebody that isn't very trustworthy and then giving up something. Like, it's very reminiscent of that, and I absolutely love the atmosphere, that it was so beautiful but also tragic, and the way it was written was very, I don't know, very whimsical. Of course there's magic, there are supernatural things, but it's also like, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but I really enjoyed it. There are many emotions, many things that are happening. One thing that I will say, however, is that in the middle, this book dragged a bit and got a bit too slow. So overall, this book will be probably too slow for some people because it's not like a very fast-paced book. I don't mind that because I really love to like learn about Eddie's life and about everything that was happening, and I love a slow build-up, and overall I'm not complaining about it. But in the middle there was a bit that just wasn't really working for me. It got a bit too slow. It wasn't really like, it's hard to explain without talking about what is happening, but it wasn't really doing it for me. So the first part, like, I flew through it. Then the middle part, I went a bit more slowly. Then the final part was great again, very, very good. And I loved the ending as well. Like, there was so much happening and it's just beautiful. So overall, I gave Eddie LaRue 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's a very good book, just not a perfect book. I know there are some people who are like absolutely crazy about this book, and I can definitely see why. I can see those qualities, and I very much enjoyed a lot of those qualities as well, just not as much as some other people do, so it's hard to explain. I thought it was a very good book. I would very much recommend it, mostly because of the reasons I mentioned before. The fairy tale mythology aspect of it, the character build up, the world building, everything about it. But it's just something that it's just not a 5-star read for me. Just hard to explain, sometimes that happens. But don't worry, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, again, 4.5 out of 5 stars. My next read of the month was an audiobook, and it was The Time of My Life by Cecilia Ahern. So I found this one in my audiobook library. I was like, well, let's just give it a try. It sounds a bit weird. And so the story is that the main character, Lucy, she's basically neglecting her life, but then somehow her life is a person, and that person that is her life makes an appointment with her that she has to improve her life. So it is like, I get where the idea came from, that your life is like an actual person that you can talk to. And yeah, it's not the worst idea ever, but the execution is just really weird. Lucy as a main character wasn't all that likable, wasn't all that, like, I wasn't really rooting for her to begin with. Her big problem is that she basically lies about everything to everybody, which is, it makes it very hard to like her. And then the thing with like her life being a person, like, it is our normal human world, but then that is a thing that is accepted. Like, oh yeah, your life, oh how fun, how interesting. That happens sometimes, that your life is a person and will make an appointment with you. No, it wasn't really doing it for me. It was okay. There were some moments that made me laugh a little bit. Like some tiny funny moments, but overall, there was not a single character I was really rooting for. I think it wasn't very well executed. So this one was actually quite a disappointment, even though like I didn't really have any expectations from it. But it was nope. Like the reason that I finished it is because it was quite a quick audiobook. It was like basically sort of like chick lit-ish, so not very difficult to get into. But mostly I was going through like, I don't know. Yeah, that was sort of my overall feeling. So I did give it 2 out of 5 stars because it definitely wasn't a very good one. For me, I wouldn't really recommend it. Like, the story had potential, but it wasn't made true, if that doesn't sound right, but you know. You probably know what I mean. Then my next 3 books that I finished were all rereads. And they were all part of the same series. So the first book was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir, and you can probably guess what the second and the third book were. But anyway, this is the first book in the Ember in the Ashes series, which is all about a slave girl named Leia and a soldier named Elias in this Roman Empire fantasy world. Roman Empire inspired, I should say. So Leia as a slave, Elias is like an elite soldier called a mask against his will, who are like the toughest, most brutal soldiers ever. And then there is much more to the story, especially in the other books. There's like many more things that are happening. So in Ember in the Ashes, I am rereading this because the final book in this book series has finally come out. I think a little while ago actually, but I'm just behind on everything when it comes to book series. But I wanted to reread all the other books in the series first, which I started with An Ember in the Ashes. And I will say the first book, this one is always my favorite. I remember reading it for the first time about 5 years ago, I think, when I just discovered booktube. I really enjoyed it and I still really love it. It's such an epic story. There's drama. It is a bit dramatic and over the top, but in a good, enjoyable way, at least for me. I love the characters. I love that you have different perspectives on the same things that are happening. I love all the mystery. I love the excitement and just the emotion. Just so fun. I really enjoyed it. And this time I enjoyed it again. I will say though, this is my 3rd time reading this book. And of course, with this one, I still remember a lot of it. And that makes it, like, as a reread, a bit less enjoyable than like a first read. But I still enjoyed it. And I will give this one always 5 out of 5 stars. Then of course, on to the second book. I listened to all of these on audiobook, by the way, which is very good because it is narrated by different narrators for the different perspectives. So by the way, the audiobooks I can really recommend. But yeah, the second one is A Torch Against the Night. Also really good, just slightly less good as like in comparison to the first one. But also epic, also adventurous. It's just, I guess maybe because it's less focused and a bit more scattered around. It's hard to say. But also very enjoyable. I give this one 4 out of 5 stars. This was my 2nd time reading this book. This is like this was my 3rd time. This is my 2nd reread. I read it for the first time. No, this is my 2nd time. Okay, yeah, I'm confused now. 2nd time reading this book. Okay, I think I've got it correctly now. It's very hard to sort of, no, wait. I read it the first time. I reread it before the 3rd book and now I've read it again. Okay, so it is my 3rd time and the first book I've read 3 times now also. Yeah. So apologies for that weird confusing bit, but I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, so yeah, really enjoyed it as well. And then the 3rd book in the series, which is A Reaper at the Gates. This is the 2nd time that I've read this. Also really enjoyed it, and this book proved to me that a reread was very much necessary because I was listening to this book and there was one big plot twist. I was genuinely surprised, even though I've read this book before. I was surprised for a minute and then I was like, oh yeah, now that they mention it, I think I remember, but at first instance, I was so surprised, like, oh wow, that's such a good plot twist. Like, I like the plot twist. But that really proves how long it has been since I've read this book and how desperate I was in need for a reread, because it would have been very weird to read the fourth book without remembering all of these things. But this one is also 4 out of 5 stars. Also good, but also not as good as the first one. The first one just has that star quality, but the rest of the series so far just doesn't have just as much. And then finally, I have the book that I've almost finished. I have, let me see, I think I have like, about 90 pages left. So not 190, 90 pages left. And that is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Farseer trilogy, which is about a bastard son of a prince named Fitz. It's in this fantasy world called the Six Duchies, and he is the bastard son and he is trained to become an assassin. There's much more to it. Yeah, I'm guessing that the rest of the series is also like going to be very exciting. So I've read most of it, but I haven't finished it yet. But still, I do really enjoy it from what I've read so far. It is an interesting world. I think Fitz is a very interesting main character. It's very well written, very engaging. Just, it feels very real, it feels realistic, even though it is a fantasy world, which I think is always a good sign of a fantasy book, because even though things can't happen in real life, I still think it's good if the feelings and the motivations feel very realistic, which was the case with this one. At least so far. Again, haven't finished it yet. Maybe something will change my mind at the end. What I will say though is that I'm guessing that this is not going to be the best book in the series, and it's also probably not Robin Hobb's best book ever. I think there are going to be more exciting ones, because it is slow, it is very character based, it is very world building-esque. It's very much about, yeah, if I'm thinking about it, there's not really, it's very scattered around, like so many things are happening. There's not always a central theme to it. Maybe something will change at the end again, but so far that is, I guess, the only thing that I'm not always enjoying, that is very much over the place when it comes to things. It's just, I guess, life or something is described in this book, especially with promise for things that are going to happen. But if you pick it up, be prepared for that this one is not going to be an action based, like super exciting, things are happening constantly. It is building up a lot. And again, I really love build up. I love it when book series take their time. And I think that's going to mean that the second book is going to be so enjoyable, because there's so many things that are now built up. You know the world, you know the characters, you know the threat and things like that. But keep that in mind if you want to pick up this book. So I'm sort of like assuming that the second and third book in the series will sort of pick up when it comes to the plot, but maybe I'm wrong with that as well. But overall, I am enjoying it. I love the writing style and I love just the world and everything. So at this moment, I think Robin Hobb has very much the potential to become a new favorite author of mine. So yeah, very excited about that as well. And that was it for my January reading wrap up. Not the longest or biggest ever, but you know, at least there is a wrap up this time around. And I think my reading mood will just continue to improve. I'm very much sure of it, and I will just, yeah, now that I'm all settled in my new home, like, can I get through a video without talking about how I moved and now like living in a new apartment? Probably not, because it's very much central to my life right now, but now that I'm all settled and used to living here, I think things like reading will sort of come back into it. And yeah, as you can probably guess from that, reading has gone pretty great in January already. But for now, this was the end of this video, and I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, maybe go subscribe, give it a like, share, comment, whatever. All those things will always really help my channel. So yeah, I would really appreciate it if you do that. And then hopefully I will see you again very soon in one of my next videos. Bye!